Hey everyone, welcome back to Your Finest Hour. I'm your host, Norman Driggers, and we hit a milestone. This is episode 10, and today we're going to talk about work-life balance once again. So this is going to be episode 2 of 3 in this little mini-series that I'm creating. Once again, I'm just trying something new and seeing how it resonates. The last episode of this, I would like to think resonated super well. I got, I think, 5 DMs, and someone went as far as emailing me to discuss their situation as far as work-life balance goes. So that inspired me to continue the series. Last episode, we talked about what kind of validation fills your cup, whether you're chasing external validation like promotions and recognitions or internal validation like that feeling of giving your all and knowing it's enough. If you haven't had a chance to listen to that one, it's episode 9. It's called The Reason You're Burnt Out. It's Not What You Think, part 1. And hopefully you all took some pretty good notes on what you found in your specific situation. Notes that inevitably give you clarity. Oftentimes people discuss the concept of filling your cup and how that relates to living a fulfilling life. Think of part 1 as the cup itself, the foundation. Part 2, this episode will address how much water you're putting in the cup, which is equally important. And then the next episode, we'll talk about the quality of water that actually goes into the cup. So if that makes sense to you, keep listening. We'll get into it. And if it doesn't make any sense and you've already listened to part 1, close this episode and never come back ever again. You're banished. Okay, so within the context of how much water you're putting in your cup, I want to share the following. I don't know if you know this, but I want to be a DJ very badly. I've always wanted to be a DJ, and it's to the point where I even have the equipment sitting right next to me. I just unfortunately don't have the time right now because I also want to have a really good YouTube channel and podcast. With that said, I intend on getting married here soon, likely in the next year, if everything works out the way that I hope it to. In the next 3 years, I hope to have my doctorate, and I'm planning on having kids with my girlfriend. If you've listened to all of the episodes up until this point, you will have a pretty decent picture of what I want to accomplish in at least the next 5 to 10 years of my life. But with all that being said, much like everyone else here, even though I'm only in the guard now, I also have a job where I care a lot about my credibility, which means I intend on working hard enough that when budget cuts come, my name is the last one to come up on the list on who we should let go. That said, I also enjoy working out because it's important for you. I love getting 8 hours of sleep, and playing video games is a massive hobby of mine. Now, why did I say all that? Because in the context of work-life balance, I have the same 168 hours in a week as everyone else. And with all those things that I want to accomplish in the short term, pretending like I can do all of them is the fastest way to fail in each one of those categories. So how do I manage all those things? Okay, so super quick story about a friend of mine, call sign Worm. I worked with him at the weapons school. Shout out Worm, super great dude. He loved Google Calendar. So I used to get massively stressed out trying to manage all the things that I had my hands in at the weapons school. And one day I went up to Worm, U-28 dude, for those that don't know. And I was like, man, I don't understand how you're managing all of the students, all of your stuff. You're the ADO, Assistant Director of Operations. So at the time he had a duty title managing more than just himself as well. And it appeared he was doing it flawlessly. And maybe he wasn't, but that dude was never late to anything, which just showed a level of attention to detail that I just simply did not have at the time. So for those that don't know, at the weapons school, you have access to the entire student calendar for the whole 5.5 months. So if an instructor drops out for any personal reason, the idea is that you can identify that on the schedule, fill the gap, and have equal situational awareness for what's going on. So unfortunately, that meant that you had to be pretty in tune with everything that was going on, not just the one class that you were teaching on that given day or in that given week. So after spending, a few hours talking to Worm and seeing kind of how he managed his life, I was able to develop a system very similar to his, allowing me to put equal trust that I had in Worm into what I now know as Google Calendar. I figured surely if he can manage his house full of kids, his wife, so all the things going on in his personal life, but also this schedule with 2,000 hours plus of training, surely it could handle my very single lifestyle. Now, I don't say that to discredit my own personal life because I also had a lot of stuff going on that I needed to manage. Specifically, I was an ADO. In the last episode, I talked about wanting to get promoted. I was finishing my bachelor's. I had my own students that I needed to worry about. So the stress wasn't exactly the same, but it was very similar. And I'm telling you, it only took me a week to notice something exceptionally profound. You give power to things you think about, and you give life to things you dedicate time to. I want you to hear that again because this is incredibly powerful. You give power to things you think about, and you give life to things you dedicate time to. Time is a resource we cannot get back. Therefore, giving something or someone your time and attention, in my opinion, is the ultimate form of admiration. It's part of the reason, especially in the newsletter, but also if you see me in person and sometimes in the podcast, you will hear me express my gratitude for your time and attention. It's not just a formality. That is something very important for me to do and continue to do. Now, in an attempt to give back to your time and attention, I'm going to tell you what Google Calendar did for me. Thank you, Worm. One Sunday, I sat down, all of the priorities, all the things that were important to me that I just recently discussed, and I opened up Google Calendar and I just started to dump all of that stuff in there. Now, the great thing about Google Calendar is it allowed me to visually depict that it was impossible to do everything. And at least for me, because I think very objectively, my stress didn't entirely go away because that's very unrealistic, but it felt like a weight had been lifted off of my shoulders by about 100 pounds. When I could visually see that gaming for an extra 2 hours could only be taken away from my sleep schedule, or it was going to result in me not meal prepping that night for the rest of the week, to have meals for the rest of the week, my decision-making cycle looped pretty quickly. And that's not to say I never made time to game or cook for myself, but what it showed me was that I simply valued my sleep on that specific day at that specific time more than I did messing around in some menus of some game that wasn't infinitely enjoyable at that time. And for the people that know me, I am a massive sports video game junkie, so it's not just as easy as turning the game off, at least for me. Like we discussed earlier, I was getting my bachelor's at the time, and it was a bachelor's of arts in intelligence studies. So it was many papers, many, many days of writing 15 to 20 page papers. So obviously, if the choice was, if you were faced with the choice of playing video games for 8 hours or doing homework for 8 hours, after I just told you I'm a huge sports video game junkie, you assume the choice to be pretty clear that video games would be what I would pick. At face value, you would think that is the purpose of the calendar. But what it actually made me do is I recognize that I can either split up my gaming time throughout the week and something else has to drop off, or I could game my whole weekend away and get an F, potentially removing. And if you didn't know this, I think if you get a C minus or a D and below when you are paying for school through the Air Force, you have to pay that money back. So the question is 8 hours of video games really worth $750? No, not to me at least. Probably not to you if you're listening to this podcast. So that's where the actual value of the calendar came in. It allowed my decision making to become almost automatic. Now, why does that matter to work-life balance? So in the story I just told you, I did not describe any of those important activities as work necessarily. It was just all part of one day, 1 week, one life is the key idea. In my story, I chose to go to weapon school knowing that my life, quote unquote, going to be busy for 5.5 months. I wanted the knowledge and the patch that you get at the end of the school by graduating, which was important to me. Therefore, I needed to give it the time it was owed, which was the trade-off. When I went back to teach, I wanted to become an instructor of instructors, which in the weapons school construct is called a blackboarder, which also takes time and effort, a trade-off. What I'd like for the listeners to truly understand is some things in our lives will take more effort and time, and some activities will be infinitely more important than others, which we'll discuss that concept in the next episode. But the first step here is identifying with the finite hours you have in a week, what activities you want to give your attention to, and ensuring they have their own time blocks to actually give attention to them. Because some of you will feel less inclined to say no, talking to your boss, talking to your wife, talking to your friends, or just simply may not know how to say no yet. I'm going to put you on game real quick. This next week, when you sit down with your calendar, and it doesn't have to be on Sunday, that's just the day that I personally do this. You can do it on Monday as well. Just make sure you have 30 minutes of free time. I highly recommend throwing all of your non-negotiable commitments and throwing all that stuff into your calendar first. That's what we had to do at the weapons school, just again, so we had situational awareness of everything that the students were doing. And then if you have a goal of getting promoted, I would add any additional layers of work that you truly believe are aligned with that promotion. All right, so what do we do next? I highly recommend in order of your own priority, I would add any activities that relate to health, relationships, and then hobbies. So what does that look like? For health, that looks like food planning if you meal prep, sleep, exercise. In my opinion, now that I have clarity on this whole situation, these should all be non-negotiables as well. And if they're not, you run the risk of the trade-off, which is getting fat like I did, at least when I did not prioritize these things. Relationships can be family, friends, events that involve talking to people that don't drain your energy is the idea. So even for my introverted crew, well, I know you love being inside, grabbing a good book, kind of energizing yourself that way. This could fall into that category outside of personal hobbies, which is the last category here. And this subject is completely up to you. Right now, I'm really enjoying YouTubing, podcasting, trying to eventually become a DJ. But the overall idea is that these are prioritized based on what goals you have for your life, as it's meant to be used as a tool or a framework to help you identify what's important to your life and where you spend a lot of your time. After a few weeks of this, the biggest shift that you'll experience is a few things. So one, I think you'll very quickly realize that keeping a calendar is pretty dope. But two, you'll also be able to recognize that you can only really revolve your day around 2 to 3 major activities before you need significant rest. And while I don't have children myself, I can only imagine that this number is halved. So maybe 1 to 2 major things, because you spend majority of your time chasing your kids around all day and being a good parent. The third mindset shift that you will realize is the system of trade-offs. Is this additional course that your job wants you to go through worth missing lunch with your friends for 5.5 months like it did for me at WIC? Maybe. Is it worth only being able to have dinner with your wife or husband 2, maybe 3 times a week? Maybe that's sustainable for this week. Is it sustainable for several months at a time? Possibly. For me at the time it was. Maybe not now, but I only have the clarity to make those decisions because looking at a calendar made it a lot more obvious when the constraints of a 24-hour day are physically staring back at me. That I can promise you. Okay, to wrap this all up, I want to be able to give you a super clear takeaway for what I would like for you to do this week if you're struggling with this problem. Take 30 minutes this week, any day of your choice. I prefer Sundays, but since this episode drops on Monday, do it today on Monday. Take all of your non-negotiable work commitments, put them in your calendar. Next, add your ideal sleep situation. So if that's 7 hours, if that's 8 hours, that's up to you. Next, ensure that breaks to eat lunch are in your schedule. Food is fuel. And if that lunch break is with a friend, then boom, 2 birds with 1 stone. You got health and relationships. But if it's not, ensure that there's blocked off time to be with the people that you love and that they love you, because they're worth your attention too, right? And lastly, toss your hobbies in there. And if you have no hobbies, because you spend most of your nights scrolling on your phone, I'm going to attack you real quick because that is not a hobby. Go do something where you are creating and not just consuming. I promise you, you spend less time scrolling on your phone, your life will get better. I made a lot of promises in the last episode and this episode because I know they work not just for you, but the research shows they work for everyone in this demographic, which is why I'm speaking to it with such conviction. Once you've done all that, look at your week, see where the gaps are, see what is actually possible. I would love to spend 15 hours listening and mixing music, but right now I just simply don't have the time for it because doing this podcast is significantly more important to me and what I want out of my life. It's not all work, but it all takes effort if you want to be good at any of it, if you want to accomplish any of these things. And if you start to recognize that some things have to fall off, just make a decision on which one is more important to you. Okay, this episode went a little bit longer than I initially intended. So, with all that being said, if you like the episode and want me to speak to a specific problem or instance that you have within, again, this pillar of mental health, or just want to share something you've navigated as it relates to work-life balance, let me know. Hit me up. Facebook is not the place. Hit me up on Instagram or in the comment section so other people can share experiences because that's the whole point. The comment section of YouTube or Spotify where this episode is posted specifically. I love you all, and I thank you for tuning in. I will see you in the coming weeks for the final episode of this series. Yay, we hit episode number 10. I'm exceptionally proud of all of us for making it this far, even though my monotone voice most likely is not giving you what you need right now. It's truly an awesome thing. 10, 1,000 more to go. I'm super stoked for this journey for all of us. And until next week, see you.